The aftershocks of the Russian-Ukraine war are reverberating across Asia, and one of the biggest impacts it is having is on the food basket. Today, we talk to J Y Chow from Mizuho Bank to find out what challenges the animal protein industry is facing and will face as a result. I am Zara Imtiaz. Welcome to Asian Agribiz Podcasts. Welcome, JY, to yet another one of our podcasts. Things must be chaotic for you, so I'll get down to our questions. Firstly, let's discuss the main question on everyone's mind: grain. Ukraine and Russia make up close to 30% of the world wheat market, and Ukraine is a major supplier of corn to Asia. Since the crisis hit, grain prices have soared. How do you see this play out in the Asian markets? Do you see buyers turning to more regional players? Can regional suppliers in Asia, like India and even Australia, step in to save the day? Are there any winners here?
Thank you, Zara, for giving this time for this platform. And yes, it's definitely a terrible crisis, definitely a human crisis. But for our industries, the ripple effect will also stay for quite a while. As you mentioned, yes, Russia and Ukraine together stand for about 30% of global export. But for corn, we talk about 17%, and barley is about 32%, and is major players in sunflower oil for about 77%. So it is really the elephant in the room when we see the ripple effect for the prices of all these commodities. So definitely for your bread and pasta, it does matter, but for our animal food industries, you will have some impact definitely that you can feel on the future price today. But also now there's questions of how long this crisis will stay, because while we worry of some grain not being in the bag, we start worrying of the next planting season, right? Because if we don't plant those seeds, maybe originations from Ukraine may be out of the scope for the next harvest years. So there's a lot of concern definitely in the market. Yes, countries like Australia or North America will step in, but I think it's also time for all of our players to look at for optionalities. In terms of optionalities, we already encountered these situations where after the COVID-19 crisis, we moved from just in time for just in case. But now we even challenge to be even more agile on formulations, on procurement. So I think building relationship and finding hedging tool solution will be very important.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is the longer it lasts, the war there, that the prices are not going to come down, and we better prepare some alternatives going forward.
Exactly. And when we talk about alternative, it's not only about the conventional ones. I think it's time to look at how these new alternatives that you can have on the feed formulation can play a role. As the conventional price continue to increase, all these new disruptions in terms of alternative proteins or alternative source of feed will definitely come in a better pictures, because the price parity will reach even faster.
That's true. I mean, when you spoke about the COVID pandemic challenges. I mean, at that time when corn prices went up, a lot of people switched to wheat, but now we have even wheat off the table. So, I mean, what kind of alternatives on a mass scale are there available for Asian feed millers right now?
Yeah, that would be a very difficult one. I think a lot of these commodities are really strongly correlated. So I think the arbitrage in price for, let's say, some of smaller commodities, if you look at DDGS and so on, will probably follow the same trends in terms of price. However, you still have probably some room to see how you can be agile on your formulations and how you can sort of increase and diversify your panel of suppliers. Reliance on few suppliers is always a risk, and I think de-risking with more diversity will be also key.
When you talk about, I mean, just getting back to the regional suppliers, like India and even Australia has had a bumper harvest. Do you think this is a more short-term gain, or do you see them playing a more long-term role in our market?
I think they're coming back, but definitely I don't think they are able to step up to cover all the potential um, losses from the Black Seas or for other regions. The question is how Australia or India will continue to outperform in terms of productions. We also see that the situation will also trigger some change of what farmers will plan to plant as well. So it's a very dynamic market. If some of its commodity price continue to be high and even continue to inflate, yes, probably farmers in India and Australia will try to see how they can also better support the rest of Asia with their productions.
Great. Just one question more further on this. I mean, we have China coming in. Apart from other countries, China has promised to continue trading with Russia. So, do you see the pressure kind of be removed for the rest of us, or do you think it will still continue? Because that's a big buyer.
It is, but you should look at the self-sufficiency of China in terms of corn and wheat. We were looking at the other day. Um, their level of import is below 5%. I mean, I think if I recall well, corn we talk about 3 to 4%, and similar to wheat. So it's not going to change a lot. And reversely, yes, China have been already strongly reliant on import of soybean, about almost 80%. And this was coming from the US and Brazil. So that Russia and China flows will probably not change much, because it does help to take out the burden that you may have in Southeast Asia for finding resource in terms of energy for your corn and wheat, and also soybean.
Okay, thank you. That's quite interesting. Now coming back to the animal protein industry, I mean, this is blow after blow for us here, and this is just going to make it worse. And we see food inflation in February, according to the FAO, peaking at 20.7% year on year. So this is bad news for the meat industry, as well as is the first item to be cut off the plate when prices are high. So, how do you see producers riding this out, and how can they cushion themselves from this blow?
Yeah, indeed, Zara. I think there is what we call the meat economics. That means the buying, your purchasing powers sort of dictate the growth of animal protein demands in some of its emerging markets. And obviously, you see the trends of the inflations of inputs will definitely impact the meat. What will unfold is probably that consumers were looking at cheaper alternatives. You may move from the red meat to a bit cheaper poultry meat. That's possible. And seafood will also be solutions, because if you look at the feed conversion rate, the lower you are, probably the less impact you may be with some of this commodity price. However, it's also interesting to see, because the production cycles of seafood, aquacultures, and poultry is shorter, so they will be impacted faster by the rising commodities, where the longer life cycles of some of these red meat, like beef, will only come in 2 years' time. So definitely we see how it's interesting to see how different countries will be impacting in terms of price. But I think for, again, a very cost sensitive market like we have in Southeast Asia, yes, this is a challenge. And that, again, probably give a bit more room for the alternative protein to thrive in the market.
In terms of, you mean soy-based products?
Yes, not only soy-based, you have a variety of solutions, either plant-based. I think cell-based is not available fully in our region, except Singapore. But definitely, I think some of these technologies will have more sort of room to expand, because the pressure on the cost parity will be lighter for them, I would say.
And how do you see, I mean, especially in Southeast Asia, you have a lot of countries that are meat exporters. How is this market volatility and breakdown in supply chains going to impact them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the impact will be felt. The question is how you measure competitive market will be positioned, right? I think Brazil maybe will be in better position because for them they do have corn and soybean, so they probably have a bit less impact in-house in terms of inflation of these commodities. So yes, market like Thailand may have a bit more pressure to compete against Brazil, for instance.
Great. And thank you so much, JY. That was very valuable insights. Would you have any takeaway tips for our listeners before we close up? It's hard to predict, but
It's hard to predict, but I would say that Asia is still the destination market. If you look at the overall protein market, of course, we have a lot of supply shock over the years, and most of the supply shock are the drivers of what will happening in the commodity price. But for those who are involved on formulations and procurement, I think it's good time to review your strategy and your tactics to see how you can be more agile and more flexible. And I think hedging tools will be probably one thing to consider as well.
great. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you very much.
I hope those insights helped you prepare for the uncertain future ahead of us. As JY said, look for alternatives. The fallout can be long and hard, but Asia still holds all the cards. Thank you for listening to us at Asian Agribiz Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts to keep up to date on the latest happenings in the animal protein industry in Asia.